Hey guys, welcome back to Madison's Reading Corner. I'm Madison. It's a new year, it's a new decade, so I don't know, got some goals. In the past, most years, I have just seen the start of a new year as like, cool, new calendar year that I am going to forget for the next 6 months as I have to write out the date. But this time I'm like, I'm here for it. I'm loving it. I'm feeling like really excited and energized about the possibilities of 2020 and the start of a new decade and like being able to start fresh and do something new. Anyways, but yeah, I'm really excited about the possibilities. I have a lot of plans in store, a lot of things I want to do. I kind of came to the realization that a lot of the things that I had been doing in the past weren't contributing to pushing me forward for the future. And like a lot of the things that I want, that I'm really passionate about, I wasn't doing. And so I want to do those things and I want to be doing things that push me there. And I think this channel is one of those things. As crazy as that may sound to a lot of people, it's a stepping stone, especially because for me, my big goal is to be published as an author. And like, if I want to get there and like make that happen, like I need to take myself seriously. I need to trust myself. I need to be willing to put myself out there and share myself and my thoughts with everyone, like with my friends, with strangers. And the funny thing is I was willing to like share my ideas on BookTube with strangers, but I was scared to share it with my friends and family. Like I did not tell anyone that I started this channel. Yeah, so like trying to start from scratch and not tell anybody and like not trust anyone with like my thoughts wasn't working. And like if I want to grow and like expand and like get my name into the world, it starts local, it starts small, it starts with the people that you know. And so this is the year that I decided that I want to start sharing that with friends and family. Hey friends, hey family, what's up? I don't know who's here. Anyways, if you're here, hi. But yeah, so I decided to open up and expand, and you know, that's part of it. And then this year in 2020, I also have some big plans about like creating a website for myself. I have a blogspot thing that I've used periodically, but it just, you know, it's limited. It's Blogspot. It's not an actual website. So this year I want to build one, create one, do something for myself that like properly reflects me and like my personal brand, and like I can actually post updates about things and like have a biography for myself and like have a portfolio of some of the things that I've worked on and like things that I'm working on. And that just isn't really a possibility with my current setup. Another big goal that I have for myself in 2020 is to finish writing my book. So in November of 2019, I started writing a new book. I decided to scrap a book that I had been writing for a couple of years, and it had been like writing off and on for a couple of years, not writing straight for a couple of years. But I'd fallen out of love with that book. I wasn't attached to it anymore. It wasn't me. I hadn't thought through like any of it before I started. I had a basic plot concept and like an idea, and that's it. Didn't have any of it mapped out, and it caused a lot of problems for me, to be honest. And so I decided that I was done with it. Maybe I'll revisit it someday because it's an interesting concept, but it wasn't me anymore. And so in November, I started writing a new book. I haven't made as much progress on it as I wanted to, but that's part of my goals this year, is to finish writing that book so I can like move on to the next phase and like start working on getting into publication and stuff. So that's kind of the goal for that. That is what I'm going to be working on in 2020. And on top of that, I have a lot of reading goals as well, which, I mean, it's the YouTube channel, the BookTube channel. That's why you're here, is to hear about the books. So allow me to get into it. So I thought it'd be fun, because it's 2020, to look at the top 20 books and series that I want to read this year. So let's get into it. Also, if you're new to this channel, be sure to press the subscribe button down below. We'd love to have you join our little family over here at Madison's Reading Corner. I post new videos every week about different bookish related content, as far as recent reads, other bookish thoughts, and also some writing things. So if any of those are things that you're interested in, or you just want to see my cute dogs that make appearances pretty often, stop on by. Okay, so first and foremost, for 2020, I want to finish reading the Throne of Glass series. 2019 was the year that I finally started getting into Sarah J. Maas. I want to finish reading what she has written in 2020. So I'm going to be finishing her Throne of Glass series. I've read the first 2 books so far. I'm about halfway through the 3rd book in the series. A little bit of a slump right now in the 3rd book, but I've heard that, the 4th book super picks up, and then from then on it's just chaos and craziness the rest of the time, so I need to finish. Anyway, so I'm super excited about Throne of Glass. There still are 6 books for me to finish in the series, so it's gonna be a lot. But I'm excited about it. I think I'm going to probably end up doing like 1 book per month, depending on like how excited I am about it. I might, push a few of them into each month. But I found that in 2019 I tried cramming all of the authors and series together like all at the same time, and then I was getting burned out. So I want to maybe spread things out a little bit so I can have a variety of different books in my sights, but we'll see. So the Throne of Glass series, if you don't know, is a fantasy series that follows our main character, Selena Sardothian, who is an assassin. And at the beginning of the series, she is imprisoned, and in exchange for her freedom, she has to agree to become the king's assassin for a series of years. And so you're kind of following her in the first book as she is competing with a variety of other thieves and assassins and thugs from across the globe to compete to become the king's champion. So it's really interesting, a lot of court politics, a lot of like different magical elements and like fairy stories and stuff, and like, I don't know, it's just really fun. It's a lot of interesting things. Selena is kind of a really interesting character, and like, I don't know, it's just fun. It very much speaks to like the YA genre though, so if like you don't enjoy seeing like the angsty romance or like some of those like more cliche elements and like those kinds of themes, may not be a series for you, but if you don't mind seeing those things in a book, it's definitely a fun read. And then another book that I want to read this year is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. I want to read it. I've heard it's so good. It's been sitting on my bookcase for like a year. It's time to read it. It is a World War II historical fiction novel that follows a chain of events that happen during the Holocaust in France. I read a book that was kind of a similar concept last year called Sarah's Key. And it was really interesting, again, following World War II events and like rounding up of Jewish citizens that were living in Paris. And yeah, it's just very heartbreaking, very upsetting, very powerful, very important. It's one that I'm really looking forward to reading. Another book that is in my sights for 2020 is West with the Night by Beryl Markham. It is her autobiography. Beryl Markham was the first female pilot to ever fly from Europe to America. So flying, west with the night. But I've heard it's such a powerful book. It's so good. And I've just been meaning to read it forever. Jordan, my husband, got me a copy of this book like a year and a half ago. It's time to read it. I've been putting it off forever. I have a tendency of doing that with nonfiction, but I shouldn't because nonfiction books are very good. So that is one that I will definitely be reading this year. This year I also am going to be picking up the Shadow and Bone series by Leigh Bardugo. In 2019, I finally read Six of Crows and I loved it. It was such a good book, so fun and like so heisty and stuff. And then Shadow and Bone is like a different series from Leigh Bardugo, but it's set in like the same world, so like just a different time period. But I realized that I need to read all 3 books in the Shadow and Bone series, and then I also need to read Crooked Kingdom, which is the sequel to Six of Crows. But I realized I need to read both of these because they're doing like a Netflix series of all of those books. So, I gotta get on that. Six of Crows is a really fun heist book that follows 6 individuals who are skilled in different areas, and they're set on like an impossible mission to get someone out of prison. So it's super good, super interesting. Anyways, there's fantasy elements, there's magic, there's fun. I need to read it, need to get on it. Also, their book covers, all of them are so beautiful. This year I will also be reading The Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. There are a few books in the series now, but mostly I'm just focusing on getting that first book read because I've had it on my shelf for like 2 years. It's time to read it. But it is a fantasy novel, of course, that kind of follows just a variety of different politics based on like bloodlines and other political interests. Honestly, I don't know as much about it as I should. That's probably why I haven't picked it up yet. But it's on my list to read in 2020. Another one that I'm super excited to read and I just hadn't gotten around to yet, and it's one that I hadn't had as much desire to read until like last summer, and that is the Outlander series by Diana Gabaldon. Oh, this series. Yeah, I fell in love with the TV show. I'm obsessed with it, and I am anxiously waiting for the new season to come out in February. Oh, so good. But yeah, I fell in love with the TV series, and the reason I'm super excited to read the books and why I'm making it a priority to read at least the first book this year is because this summer we're planning a trip to the UK, so we're going to be spending some time in England and in Scotland, especially around like the Highlands in Scotland where the book takes place. Outlander is historical fiction and it follows our main character Claire. She is a World War II combat nurse. After the war has ended, her and her husband decide to take kind of a second honeymoon to reconvene and figure themselves out after having so many years apart. So they decide to spend their second honeymoon up in the Highlands in Scotland. And shortly after they arrive, a chain of events happen that takes Claire from being in the 1940s to being in the 1700s amidst the revolution between the Scottish Highlanders and the British. And so she's kind of taken into this world of confusion and craziness and like, yeah, it's so interesting because you follow all of these historical events that actually did happen, and you're seeing it from the perspective of someone who is living in modern days and who knows modern medicine and stuff. And so like being a nurse, being trained in medicine, she knows how to cure people and help people. But because it's the 1700s, they all think she's a witch. There's some like exciting like romance aspects in there as well. And like, yeah, I'm so excited both for reading this book and also, of course, for going to the UK this summer. But I think it's going to be such a fun read to like get me excited and amped about this trip. As if I wasn't already excited. Can you tell I'm excited? This year is going to be the year that I finally finish reading 1984 by George Orwell. It's been a long time coming. So I loved Animal Farm by George Orwell. It's such a good book. It's so important, so impactful. It has such a fascinating story on society at large and like different political attitudes. But for some reason, I just never got around to reading 1984. I started reading it 3 years ago and then I just never finished it. But this is the year that I want to finish it. I think I'm ready to do so. It's one that like I've been telling myself I would finish for years and it's time to do. The next one is going to be a reread for me, but it's one that I haven't reread in a couple of years and I'm excited to do so, and that is the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. So that includes The Way of Kings, Words of Radiance, and Oathbringer. It's one of my favorite series of all time, and it's one that I definitely know I could easily accomplish this year. I have all of them on audiobook, so it makes for like my time getting ready in the mornings and commuting and doing all of those things a little bit more exciting. I love listening to audiobooks whenever I can. But yeah, The Way of Kings is just such a great series. I'm excited to revisit it and see some of the things that I missed the first time around. This year I also will be reading Caraval by Stephanie Garber. I'm hoping that this book feels like The Night Circus. That's my hope and dream. So I read The Night Circus in 2019, absolutely loved it and fell in love with it. And from what I understand, Caraval is kind of similar. It's kind of follows a traveling carnival and different magical and political aspects following that. I've heard it's one that has a lot of fun surprises and that it's just a really fun and exciting read. So that is in my sights. So I'm planning on picking up Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. I have not yet read this book. One of my coworkers recently chastised me for having read everything else that Brandon Sanderson has written and not Elantris. I have the book on my shelf, meaning to get to it, and I just haven't. So that's going to happen this year. Like many of Brandon Sanderson's other works, Elantris is connected to kind of his like Cosmere of like his books at large. So kind of like the like MCU of like Marvel's movies, but like in book form, but like with his world that he's created. Is good. But yeah, it just follows different like magical systems over there. I love everything that Brandon Sanderson writes for the most part, so I'm thinking I'm gonna like Elantris too. And the next set of books is going to be partially a reread and also a new read. So I'm going to be revisiting the Red Rising series by Pierce Brown, which is another one of my favorite series. A couple of months ago I reread the first book in the series and then decided to kind of take a little bit of a break before picking up the other ones. But I wanted to do a full reread of the series because he recently released a new book in the series and I did not remember everything that happened previously. So I thought it could be healthy to do, you know, quick revisit of everything. So that'll be happening this year as far as like rereading the other 3 books in the series and then reading this new one. I also will be picking up Vicious by V.E. Schwab. In 2019 I read V.E. Schwab's Darker Shade of Magic series and ooh man, I loved it so much. It was so good. Like if you haven't read it yet, you need to. But I've heard that Vicious and Vengeful by V.E. Schwab are both super good books, so I'm planning on picking those up pretty early this year. In Vicious, it follows a couple of college roommates who are studying supernatural phenomenons and like how you can help people essentially like get superpowers and stuff. So like it follows like these 2 people as like they go on this journey to try to figure it out and like they have this falling out and like good guys, bad guys, good versus evil. I don't know. I'm excited about it though. I love V.E. Schwab's writing style. I've read a few other books by her in the past, so I'm excited to pick up Vicious. Another book that I'm super excited to reread this year is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. I realize I haven't been picking up the other books like that I own physical copies of for this, but I had to do so with this copy because it is the most beautiful copy ever of The Name of the Wind. I'm not a big fan of the other covers that have come out for The Name of the Wind, but I love this one. It's so pretty. I love the spine on it. The inside has, like on the end pages, has like the main first quote from the book. And of course it has these beautiful red edges. So pretty. But The Name of the Wind and The Wise Man's Fear by Patrick Rothfuss are 2 of my favorite books, especially this first book, The Name of the Wind. Yeah, it will forever hold a very special place in my heart, and I'm super excited to revisit it this year. The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss follows our main character, Kvothe, as he tells his story to a chronicler. So he's telling his story about him growing up because there's been a lot of kind of mythology surrounding him because he's this very fascinating individual and he had a lot of weird things happen to him, a lot of things that are very heartbreaking, a lot of things that are very triumphant. But yeah, so like you're following his story of him growing up from childhood into adulthood, and he's telling his own story, and he like says himself at the beginning that he's like, you know, I'm going to tell this story how I want, and some of it may be true, some of it may not be true, and like it is what it is. And like the whole time like that he's telling the story about himself, you're like, how much of this is true? How much of this is embellished? I don't know. And like amidst this, like as he's telling his previous story, there are things at work that are happening in the world that like apparently he was like a part of, and like he has affected some things, and oh, it's so good. The fantasy is great. The world building is incredible. Patrick Rothfuss does such a great job describing everything that is happening in this world and like thinking through all of the different aspects, and like yeah, it just is such a great series, and I'm so excited to revisit this year. Early this year I'm going to also be picking up Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan, and I'm so excited to read the book. I loved the movie. It's such a fun movie. It's so entertaining, so like great. I don't know. For me, Crazy Rich Asians holds a very special place in my heart because I used to live in China. Jordan and I lived in China for about 6 months 2 years ago, almost to the day is when we came back. But yeah, so seeing kind of like reflections of like Chinese culture, and like, of course, this is like Chinese culture at like an immense scale as far as, you know, these people in the books and in the movie are so wealthy, so rich, like you can't even fathom it. And like, I don't know, but it just is fun, and like it's fun seeing some of the different cultural aspects and like revisiting that. And Crazy Rich Asians is one that I like to watch every Lunar New Year. And so I'm thinking I'm probably going to be reading this one before Lunar New Year so I can like read the book and then watch the movie again. But I'm excited to see the similarities and differences between book to movie format. But if you haven't seen the movie, if you haven't watched the book yet, it follows our main character, Rachel, who is traveling with her boyfriend to visit his parents in Asia. And little does she know, until she's on her way there, that her boyfriend is the heir to an immense fortune. And so it kind of follows the antics of this very wealthy family and all their day-to-day things, and follows Rachel as she's trying to navigate this very wealthy upper-class society that she has not been a part of, and that she doesn't quite know how to deal with. Her mother, who is an immigrant from China, is not very wealthy, wasn't part of that like upper class society, and so even though she herself is Chinese and fits into, you know, the cultural mold, she doesn't fit into their cultural mold because she isn't super wealthy and isn't part of like the heir of a huge tycoon. I'm excited to read this book. I think it's going to be very fun to visit this year. And I think it'll just be a fun, light, fluffy read. I don't read a lot of contemporary, as is evident of how many fantasy books I've already listed on my TBR for the year. I'm excited to see this one in action. I also will be reading Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte this year. It's a book I've been meaning to pick up for a long time. But I finally am going to get to it this year. I decided to go with the audiobook format of it, so I have that queued up and downloaded on my phone, and I'll be listening to it early this year. But yeah, it's one I've been meaning to read. It's a classic that I know I'm going to enjoy. I just sometimes have a hard time getting started with classics. Like, I always have good intentions of reading them, and then I get kind of bogged down or sometimes get myself into a reading rut reading it. And yeah. Children of Blood and Bone by Toni Adeyemi is another book that I'm excited to pick up. This one is a very exciting one, and it's one that there was a lot of buzz on the internet about when it first came out, and that is because it is a fantasy novel that takes place in Africa. It's a book that is inspired by African culture, and I think that that's so awesome. We don't have enough of that. Like, most fantasy books are set in like a European environment, and like there's nothing wrong with having a European environment, but like, why wouldn't there be magic in like African cultures and in like South American cultures and Asian cultures? And like, I don't know, I think it's just super fun. I'm so excited to see that diversity in a book because, again, YA does not have a lot of diversity. I'm very aware of that. And so being able to support a YA book that does have that kind of diversity and that does have those elements that I love, I'm so excited to read. 2020 is also going to be the year that I pick up Zenith by Sasha Alsberg and Lindsay Cummings. Sasha, of course, is very well known in the booktube community. She is very beloved and kind of got her start here and got some of her name recognition here, and then was able to meet up with Lindsay Cummings, and together they crafted this awesome book that's a huge bestseller. And they have Zenith and Nexus by the two of them. And it's a science fiction novel that I'm really excited to pick up. But one of the things that I think I'm so excited about with this series is being able to, you know, read one of Sasha's books, because I mean, she is kind of a big inspiration to me in the way that she, you know, got her start on booktube and kind of got her name out there, and then was able to like actually like see herself like grow from just booktuber to published author, and she gets to travel all the time with her writing, and like, I don't know, it's just so fun seeing people who have like similar starts as myself actually grow and like accomplish those dreams, and it just makes it that much more real to me. And so for me, like, Zenith is a book that I'm excited about, both for its plot, because I think it's going to be super fun and like I enjoy a good science fiction story, but also just because of that story itself, of the fact that she had this origin and created this for herself, and like it gives me hope for myself. And so I'm excited to pick up this book and support someone in the community. I also am going to finally be finishing the Three Dark Crowns series by Kendar Blake. I love this series so much. It's one that has a lot of mixed feelings online, which I get. Sometimes I myself have mixed feelings about it. It's fine though. But the last book in the series is called Five Dark Fates. But the Three Dark Crowns series as a whole is just really interesting to me on a political sphere. So it's a matriarchal society in which every generation a set of triplets is born, each one of them born with a different magical ability. And so these three queens are separated at a very young age and are brought up by the different factions. So the Poisoner Queen is brought up by the faction of Poisoners, and like the Naturalist is brought up in like the Naturalist community. And then when they come of age, they all come together, and in order to decide who is the official queen of the island, they have to have essentially a fight to the death. It's essentially this really dark story of these three sisters having to vie for the crown and like go against their family and their blood to have the goal of becoming the official queen of the island. And yes, it's very dark, a lot of political intrigue, a lot of like political workings, and like, I don't know, each book has had things that are so good about it, and like some things that I'm kind of like, plot is a little bit rushed here and there, but like overall, there's been so many things that just leave me speechless that I'm super excited to finish off this series and see where it leaves off. And the last book for my 20 books of 2020 is The Two Towers by J.R.R. Tolkien. 2019, I finally read Fellowship of the Ring, which has been a long time coming. I literally lied to people for years about having read the entirety of the Lord of the Rings series. I had read The Hobbit as a kid, but not the rest of the series. Anyways, so that's kind of my goal, is to do at least one of the Lord of the Rings books per year. So Two Towers this year, and then Return of the King next year. Maybe I'll put Return of the King in this year as well, but for sure I will be reading the second book in the series. Do I need to do a synopsis for Lord of the Rings? Probably not. You know what it is, right? You've seen the movies. I've seen the movies. We've all been there. There's a ring, bad guys, elves, orcs, wizards. Yeah, I don't know. I'm excited to pick that up though and continue reading that series. But that wraps up my top 20 books I want to read in 2020. I'm planning on getting to at least 50 books this year, but this is at least the top 20 books I'm really excited about. Like I said before, a lot of these books that I listed on here are like series that I'm wanting to read this year, so really this is more like my top 40 books that I want to read in 2020. You know, only 10 more to go, and that's all the books I want to read this year. I suspect that there will be a few that I pick up along the way that I wasn't planning on or that I haven't thought about yet. I probably will have a couple of other rereads this year, a few other new books that I pick up, but either way, I'm really excited to see what kind of books I pick up this year, what the future holds. I'm really excited and eager about the start of this new year, the start of this new decade, new chapter of life. Hope you guys are excited about this fresh start as well. You know, whatever your goals may be, I hope that you follow through with them and make the most of your situation. So tell me, what are some of your goals for this year? Whether they be reading goals, whether they be personal goals, I would love to hear about it. Tell me in the comments below. Also, if you haven't pressed the subscribe button yet, what are you doing with your life? Press the subscribe button, join the crew. Sometimes I dance on camera. You ready to subscribe yet? Thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you guys again next week. Bye.